There's a storm across the valley. The clouds are rolling in. The afternoon is heavy on your shoulders. There's a truck out on the 4-lane, a mile or more away. The whining of his wheels just makes it colder.
Welcome to Community Forum. Today is Tuesday, October 28th, I believe, 2020. And we're Zooming because it's COVID time, and hopefully we'll be able to meet Stephanie Danielson in person. Stephanie is the Director of Planning and Economic Development for the town of Easton. And I welcome you, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you for having me, Priscilla.
Oh, you're welcome. Listen, tell us a little bit about your background. I know that viewers are interested in knowing a little bit about the people who work for them.
Okay. So a little bit about my background. I actually started my career in back office systems development, automating back office processes. And while I found that rewarding and advanced through that profession, I always had an interest in what's going on in towns and communities. I grew up in a small town in southeastern Massachusetts, and urban planning wasn't something that was discussed even in the schools as a possible career. So it wasn't until I was an adult that I really understood what that was. And it was something I was very interested in seeing how communities developed over time, and eventually, educated myself and started getting involved locally in different boards and organizations, and then made a career change. And here I am all these years later.
Now, I didn't know that you made a career change. Interesting. Also interesting that you grew up in a small town. So being in Easton is somewhat in line with your background.
It is. So I grew up in Lakeville when Lakeville was still very rural. Probably the time I was growing up, Easton was still as rural as Lakeville. There's been more housing development over the last 20 to 30 years in that community. Again, around the same time, we saw Easton growing. My husband and I moved to Whitman, another small town, back in the early 80s. And we became very familiar with Easton because we were very active outdoors, and we'd come over to Borderland on a regular basis as our children were growing up, and we did a lot of mountain bike riding and we did a lot of hiking. So we became very familiar with the community.
So you recognized Borderland as one of your target enjoyment places.
Yes, very much so, yeah.
So that introduced you to Easton too. So tell me a little bit about your job. But before we do that, I really want to thank you, and the community does too, for coming out of retirement. You just retired last December, 2019, and here you are back. Can you give us a little bit of what the basis for that was? I mean, they just couldn't find anybody as good as you. Is that the problem?
I would love to flatter myself that that's true. I think they just didn't have the time to find someone who could step in. Again, Connor gave me a call, and well, it was very tempting. I was going back and forth. I really liked what I was doing, and but thought about it a lot, and thought about the proximity and how close it is. And it's not until you leave a place that you realize how much you really miss it. And that was definitely happening with me over the years that I've worked in the town. I've met a lot of people. I've worked with a lot of really great people. All the folks I work with at the town offices, I have to say, I enjoy everybody. It's one of the best jobs I've ever had. From that standpoint, that I can't say there's not a single person that I don't enjoy working with. So
That's wonderful.
it was very tempting, and I accepted the offer.
Okay, so now, well, we're glad you did. So now, with all your expertise, tell us a little bit about the requirements of your job. What is your job all about?
So from kind of a high level, what we do in the planning department is we work with the town to help the town define what its future should look like, what the town wants the future to look like, what a sustainable and healthy environment looks like to the community. And then we work with the town to achieve that goal. So I know that you're familiar with Envision Easton, which is the master plan that the town undertook and completed back beginning in 2013 and ending in 2014 when it was adopted. That's a process you go through. So you reach out to the community, you seek input, ideas, thoughts on what people like about their town, how they want to see things. If they want to see things change, what are those changes that they'd like to see? What do they want to see the same? And then, we work to put in policies, we take actions. You can see from plans that have been done over the years, the comprehensive wastewater management plan, the Envision Easton plan, economic development plans and strategies, that there was recognition that in order for the town to grow economically in certain target districts, we needed sewer, you needed infrastructure. And so based on the input and planning that had preceded that, the town has gone ahead and sewered 3 districts in town that hadn't been before, and that have helped to spark economic development for the town. So in a nutshell, that's really what we do here. In particular, we focus on general land use planning, socioeconomic planning. We have a community planner who helps with community housing as well as historic preservation. And then Andrea Langhauser is our environmental planner, and she works with the Conservation Commission and the Agricultural Commission.
So you have quite a challenge, and so when some of these projects come before the town planning board, I take it that you do the research and advise the planning committee as to what is acceptable, appropriate, and doable.
Yes, and we do that from a couple of aspects. One, when the town's looking at, or the planning board is looking at adopting new zoning, I help them understand what other communities have done and where they've been successful in achieving the kinds of goals that our planning board's trying to achieve, or the town's trying to achieve with their zoning, and make recommendations there, help them through the process, prepare for town meeting. Greg Strange and I, we have some zoning amendments that are going to be on the fall town meeting warrant. And one of the things that we'll be doing is doing an ECAT session to talk about what those zoning amendments mean and what they're trying to achieve, so people understand that when they go to town meeting. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is when projects are being proposed and coming before the town for permitting and approval, I make sure that they comply with the zoning regulations and the other rules and regulations that apply to the project. One of the things we like to do early, and generally I do this with the chair, Greg Strange, is meet with applicants before they submit their applications, so that we can help them understand how to make the project successful, both for them and for the town, and to facilitate the permitting process.
So your job is really to look out for the for the town, for the residents, and so that there is compliance by the developers of projects with our zoning, which is all about sustainability, isn't it?
That is a big part of the job. A big part of it is to make sure that the town's interests are protected. And at the same time, in facilitating the process for the applicant, trying to make it more predictable for them.
I think that's wonderful. I didn't know that. I mean, that makes so much sense, because otherwise it's going to cost time and money for the applicant to go back and rewrite what's appropriate and what's in accordance with our laws, our zoning laws. So what do you feel are the biggest challenges that you face on a daily basis?
The biggest challenges, gosh, that's kind of a hard one.
I imagine you have a lot of challenges. So if you want to list some of them, you don't have to give me the biggest.
I think one of the challenges is always to get consensus among people and make sure that people understand why something's being proposed and what the benefits are to the community in moving something forward, a project. So that's always one of the challenges.
Do you ever get asked your opinion by the planning board on specific issues?
I do.
And they take your advice, I'm sure, with a great deal of weight and satisfaction. So, and you have been around for such a long time that they trust you. And I think that's an important element in your job, don't you think?
Yes, I do. And I believe they do trust. They have trust in me and the staff, and they do seek opinions. What I really like about the planning board is that the members all contribute to the discussion, which is really important to make sure that you have that well-founded decisions are being made by the board, because they raise really good questions, both of me and the applicants. And they have a good discussion, even when they disagree, or they may disagree on a point, they will talk it around so that they can get to consensus.
That's really important, because an informed decision is what we all want by the people who represent us in Easton.
That's right. And I would say they're not arbitrary. That's always a fear that the developer or project proponent has, is that some of the members or a board might be arbitrary. I think this board is very thoughtful. They understand their rules and regulations. They understand what their charge is. And I think we find that with the other boards that the department supports as well.
Do you find that there are projects which bring you a great deal of satisfaction? If so, could you describe one of the projects that you feel gave you most satisfaction in your job?
Oh, sure. The most recent example is the Five Corners project with the DIF, the District Incremental Financing Program, that was passed at May town meeting in 2019. That was a very rewarding program, and working on that effort, it was a suggestion that came out of a workshop that I had attended and had learned how this program works and thought it might be beneficial to Easton. And Connor, the town administrator, really thought it could help with the sewer project and help with the financing of that, and help ease the betterment. But not just that, for the sewer project, but not just that, it also, we had a visioning session with residents and business owners in the Five Corners and talked about what those folks would like to see happen in the future in that area. They all talked about wanting a walkable, livable neighborhood feel where they could avail themselves of services such as restaurants or recreation within the district without necessarily getting in a car to have to drive somewhere. So that was very rewarding in hearing what people had to say and then being able to incorporate that into the plan and program. And then seeing the sewer project proceed. And now we have development projects already underway in going through the permitting process that will help achieve that vision. So that's a recent one.
I see. Speaking of that, a lot of residents are hopeful and concerned that more commercial development will occur in that sewer district and the other sewer districts, so that the tax rate will rise for commercial users. That rate currently is the same as residential users, as you know. So is there any hope on the horizon that we may get some tax relief by having more businesses developed in those districts?
Well, with the zoning that's being proposed for that area, it allows mixed use and business use in commercial where it's appropriate. There are different sub districts, and we certainly expect to see that. It's now public record because they filed an application. We're expecting a Starbucks to go in on Robert Drive, which would be new development that would bring some more revenue into the town. Certainly the sawmill project, which is the residential development, will bring more revenue into the town. So I think we're already starting to see some of that movement.
Well, the residential development, of course, never quite pays for itself, does it? So that it's really detrimental in many ways to the tax concerns of Easton's residents. You do see, it's wonderful to hear that Starbucks is coming, although the Beanery might not be happy.
Well, they're on opposite ends of the town. And,
Yes.
and the Beanery is very popular. It's one of my favorite places to go.
Oh, that's wonderful. Great.
And they have wonderful hamburgers now.
Really?
Yes, yes. That rival McMenemy's.
Oh my goodness, bringing back tradition. How wonderful. The 123, 138 area, is that where Starbucks hopefully will come?
They're not on 123 and 138, down by the Target in the Avalon project.
Oh, okay. So it's.
No, I'm sorry, I said Robert Drive, assuming everybody probably knows, but that's the roadway that enters into that complex where the big Y is. And
so what about 123 and 138, that sewer district? What are the hopeful prospects of commercial development there?
well, one of the projects that was approved last year was at 661 Washington Street, which is the old Career Plaza. And that's for mixed use development. So commercial, I think they're planning on attracting a restaurant to that location, as well as some commercial and residential.
I see. Okay, well, the more commercial they can come to Easton, certainly the better for our tax relief. Now, I understand that 20%, when commercial reaches 20% of the tax basis, then that's when the town is allowed to increase the commercial percentage assessment. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I thought you knew everything.
I don't. There's a lot I don't know, Priscilla.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, anyway, that's what I understand. So that's the goal, to increase the commercial so that we can, so our taxes don't keep going up and up and up, but that they're equitably shared with the commercial interests. So what are your immediate concerns in terms of the planning and economic development?
Well, I think, and you asked about challenges previously, so this would be a challenge, I think, for any any community right now is how we're going to come out of, how the economy is going to come out of COVID-19 and the lockdown and the impact that it's had on the economy today. I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges for everybody, and figuring out how we can continue to support our small businesses and help them grow and survive. I think that's, but I'm optimistic. I think that we will. I just think that that's going to be one of the challenges that we're all facing.
Well, I think this, yeah, I agree. And I think that the state, Governor Baker has, it's the town and the state have some buckets of money to distribute, whether it's grants or loans to small businesses to alleviate some of the costs and losses. Is that correct?
That's through the state program. And that's some of the stimulus money that's being applied. So we did just receive notice last week that there was another round of small business grants that were available. So one of the things we did is we made sure that information was available to our local businesses. Any business for which we had an email address, we mailed out the information. We sent an email. We also put a notice on the town website. The Economic Development Council, which we also support out of my department, has a Facebook page, so we posted it there. So even small things like that, helping to ensure that business owners know where there's assistance and how to take advantage of that. Those are important activities.
That's great. And also, not only will this program be broadcast through ECAT, but one can access this interview online at eastoncat.org and to look under series for my program, Community Forum, so that if people see it on TV and they want their friends or neighbors to also be informed, they can tell them to go online at eastoncat.org.
Yeah.
So has COVID, how has these COVID times made your job more challenging?
I think in some ways it's made it a little easier. The ability to do online meetings for board meetings, night meetings, while you really miss that human interaction and having someone right in front of you that you're talking with. I think it's made it easier for some people to attend meetings. And again, when you're doing a lot of night meetings and you can do them from your office or from home, it makes it a little bit easier. The face-to-face contact, as I said, I miss that. We encourage people to contact our department and call, and we've frequently set up meetings in the past where we'll meet with the developer or an engineer, talk with someone personally over their project and help them work through it. Now we need to do that over a Zoom meeting. It still happens, and we do it. So it's a little more challenging, and again, you miss that human contact. But I think we're really resilient and we're working through it and making it work. Not just the best we can, but making it work well.
That's great. And aren't we fortunate in this day and age to have the technology that allows that?
Yes, and I will say that is one of the, that has been one of the wonderful aspects of working in Easton is for a small town, we have always had the technology we need to do our jobs and do them better so that we better serve the community. I think you may be aware, Priscilla, and I know some of your listeners are, that we have a fully automated online permitting system that the town has been using. We started with the Conservation Commission permit filings back in 2010, I think it was. And then we've added building permits, Board of Health permits, planning board, fire prevention, the licenses that are issued through the select board. And this makes it a lot easier for applicants to submit their applications. It made it easier for the town to respond to COVID because we already had all of this online, where a lot of communities were struggling, going, how do we do this? How do we get documents online? How do we receive applications online? We already had a solution for that.
Mhm.
And it also makes all the information readily available to the public. So it keeps our projects very transparent as to what's happening, what's been submitted, what the communications are as the hearings proceed.
So how would one access that information online? What's the,
So right now, and I'm hoping that over the next few months, we'll have a single entry point through our website that will direct you to the different department permitting systems. It's all one permitting software company, but there's a different avenue to get to the building permits, to get to the planning board permits. But if you go to the building department, I believe on their homepage, they have a link directing you to the building permits. If you go to the planning board page, there's a link that would direct you to the permits before the planning board, et cetera, et cetera.
oh, that's incredible. Wonderful. I didn't know that. So that makes, for transparency, which means that any citizen can access all the information that's currently on the table.
That's right. And so you have the transparency. It's another improved service level, because we get a lot of calls from people. There are companies that are involved with construction projects, and they want to know what projects are out there and have been approved so that they can submit bids, and that we can direct them directly to the website, which means it frees up staff time. At the same time, they can get answers that they need very quickly.
Wow, that's incredible and very efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what do you see are the future needs that Easton faces?
I think into the future, managing change is always going to be, it's going to be a challenge. It's also going to be an opportunity for the town. Things change over time. Nothing stays still. Nothing stays the same. The town really prides itself on its small town character, the amount of permanently protected open space and green space that you all benefit from. And I think how you grow in the future and manage and retain that character is always going to be a challenge for the town.
Yeah. Now, do you advise all of the conservation preservation committee, as well as the Economic Development Council?
Those boards are supported through the planning department. I personally support the planning board. Andrea Langhauser, who is the environmental planner, supports the Conservation Commission and the Agricultural Commission. Wayne Beitler, who is our community planner, works primarily with the Affordable Housing Trust and the Historical Commission. And Wayne and I both support the Community Preservation Committee.
I see. Okay.
And Suzanne Nigo Levy is the clerk for the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I provide some support for the Zoning Board of Appeals as well.
I see. So once more, the Economic Development Council, who supports that in your department?
That would be me.
I see.
I'm the staff liaison.
Okay, and I believe, is Dottie Fulgenetti the chair of the select board?
She was. Mark Lamb is now the chair.
Who?
Mark Lamb.
No, I know, but no, what I'm saying is there's always a representative from the select board who sits on that economic development committee. And who would that be?
Both Dottie and Mark are on the committee, and they're both select board members.
Okay. Okay, very good. Mark Lamb. Yeah. All right. So Thank you so much for this very informative session. Boy, we learned a lot, but we also gained some admiration for the depth of your duties and the whole scope of what you have to deal with. And you certainly have come so well prepared to the town, and you've been here in such a long time that you have an appreciation for what the town wants, and certainly the past surveys have helped to guide you in your job, don't you think?
Yes, yes. And thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, yes, and thank
Real
you.
opportunity.
Yes, it was wonderful. And I think it's so important for the town to not just know what your job is, but to also see you as a human being, and your sincerity and devotion to your work. And also the fact that you're very accessible, so that nobody has to fear calling you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Yes, I would encourage anyone, if you have a question, you want to get some answers, please give me a call. If I can't answer them, I will direct you to the person that can.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again. And this is Priscilla Almquist-Olsen for Community Forum, wishing all our viewers a safe and safe time. And until the next time, stay well, be safe.